Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and it's time for another low-cost PC from GearBest.com to check out. This is called the EZBOOK 3 Pro from a company called Jumper. And on the surface, it actually looks pretty nice. It looks a lot like a MacBook Air 13. But as you'll see in a few minutes, there are some sacrifices to be had here for its $300 price tag, which we'll cover in detail in the full review coming right up here. But I do want to mention, in the interest of full disclosure, that this did come in free of charge from GearBest.com. However, all the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Nobody is paying for this review, and no one is reviewing this content before it is posted. Now, I do want to begin with my usual warning about these PCs, which is this is a buy at your own risk proposition. This is a generic brand. They're making something very inexpensive, but that means it comes at the expense of customer support. So this company does not have a worldwide presence where you'll easily get support if something were to go wrong 6 or 8 months down the road. So just set your expectations accordingly. You're not going to get the support you might get from HP or Asus or some other PC manufacturer that actually has an infrastructure to support their customers. That's not something you're going to see with Jumper here. So let's jump into the hardware and see how all of this plays out. Now, this sells for about $300 right now on GearBest, but like everything on GearBest, they have sales and stuff that go on from time to time, so you might find it for less. It has a Celeron N3450 Pentium processor. That is the Apollo Lake processor, the new generation of these low-end chips, which we've seen performing very well in mini PCs. It's now in this laptop. It is fanless, so it's silent when it's operating. It has 6 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM and 64 gigabytes of eMMC storage. And we did a teardown on my extras channel to see if you could upgrade it. I could not find any way to upgrade this particular model, but apparently there are models that do allow you to slide in an M2 SATA SSD on here if you want to expand its storage. However, I don't know which one you're going to get. The one GearBest sent to me is certainly not upgradable, but they are listing it as such. So perhaps they gave me one of their older stock models to look at. But just bear that in mind. You may get this and may not be able to upgrade it. The display on it is very nice. It is a 13.3-inch 1920 by 1080p display. It's IPS. It's a little on the cold side, but it is decent enough for what you're getting here for the price point, and really nice viewing angles. I'm on battery right now, so the brightness is a little turned down, but overall I was pleased with the display here, given some of the other issues you're going to be seeing here on the rest of the review. It does weigh about 3 pounds, 3.07 pounds to be exact, or 1.39 kilograms, so a little heavier than the MacBook Air it replicates, but close enough. It's all metal, so there's no plastic on this one, but there are some build quality issues that I came across as I was evaluating it, in particular here on the hinge. So they really tried to replicate the look of the MacBook Air 13. You've got this rubber molding that goes around the entire screen, and then there's a portion here at the bottom to allow the hinge to freely move over the keyboard deck here. But what I'm finding is that when you open the laptop up, the molding here is rubbing against this portion of the keyboard deck, and it's making a clicking sound. It's stressing everything, and I'm sure at some point it's going to come apart over there. So there's definitely some tolerances here that were not met, and they went ahead and built it anyhow. So although it looks nice, it's not going to feel as nice when you're opening up your laptop and hearing that click going on. The keyboard is decent on it. It is not backlit, but it does have a similar size to what you might see on the MacBook Air. Pretty easy to type on. Actually decent travel on it as well, so I was pleased with the keyboard. But the trackpad on this is a real issue in a couple of important areas. The first is the click area on the trackpad. So this is a click pad like many other laptops are these days, but if you push down here, nothing happens because it only clicks on the lower portion of the pad, like right down here is the only place you're going to get a real physical click. Up here, nothing happens. Down here, you get the click. The right side of the trackpad here, of course, will be your right click, but it's not doing this through software. There's actually 2 physical buttons underneath this pad here that you have to kind of look for. So not the best quality trackpad here. The other thing that happens is what you're seeing right now, which is it stops tracking completely, and then the arrow key starts getting initiated somewhere, and nothing happens at all. So I've been having a lot of trouble with this thing, trying to get the trackpad working properly. Oddly enough, they had a piece of software pre-installed, like even on top of the Windows installation, because when I booted this thing up, I had to set up my account and everything, but when it came up, there was a little piece of software waiting for me called Trackpad Blocker, and when I turn that software off is when some of this craziness begins. So I'm almost wondering if they have a known hardware issue and they found that this little software utility gets you out of that problem. I'm not sure, but it just seems like another area where they just decided to ship it before they solved all of their problems. So we're going to use an external mouse for the rest of the review. Now, we are going to be looking at this laptop today because this is the first Apollo Lake laptop that I've received here, this generation of Intel processor. So it's a good baseline to get started from. But as you can see, I'm already a little weary of recommending this to anyone given some of these hardware issues I'm seeing here right off the bat. But I think it's important to start exploring what these laptops are going to look like. And this is the first one we've received on the channel so far, so it'll be our baseline device. Now on the left-hand side here, you do have some ports to look at. You got a headphone jack here. You have a USB 3.0 port over here, as well as a micro SD card slot right here. This goes up to 128 gigabytes to offset the non-upgradable one that I have here, so you can install that on the side if you wish. Over here is a mini HDMI out to a display if you want to hook up an external display. Another USB 3.0 port here, and then your power goes in over there. Oddly enough, or not, maybe not so oddly, the power connector and the headphone jack are about the same size, so you definitely need to make sure you know to plug in things to the right ports, because who knows what will happen if you get them confused, but they are almost exactly the same size, and I'm sure people will plug things into the wrong port, so just bear that in mind. And of course, no USB Type-C or any other modern accoutrements on this thing. So let me get my mouse hooked up to this now. We're going to boot up some of the things that we usually look at here and see how this Apollo Lake laptop performs. So let's kick things off with some YouTube watching. I've got my 1080p 60 video here that we test on this low-end hardware running on the Edge browser. It seems to be performing well. I actually recommend Edge over Chrome on low-end PCs, especially for watching 1080p 60 video. It's better optimized for hardware decoding here, but I'm not getting any drop frames. You occasionally see one or two here or there, but by and large, it is functioning as expected here. And we'll take a look now at NASA's website. Now, this does have wireless built in, of course, but it is not running on the 5 gigahertz band, so it's wireless and only 2.4 gigahertz. But apparently the one that they're listing on GearBest right now does have a dual band modem on it, but it's not AC from what I can gather. So again, I don't know which one you're going to end up with, but this one is just wireless N, but it seems to be performing okay given what it has for a processor inside. It does have Bluetooth on board as well, so you can connect up keyboards, mice, and game controllers and anything else Bluetooth with it without any issue here. So that is the web browsing performance. Now, we've been running the speedometer test from browserbench.org, and on that test I got a score of 34.14, which is not all that much faster than the Atom-based GPD Pocket we just reviewed a couple of days ago. That one came in around 30. We should be seeing better performance out of an Apollo Lake chip like this one has than we're seeing, but perhaps they did some throttling of the chip because they knew they were not putting a fan on this. Most of the mini PCs that we have looked at running with these chips do have fans to cool them off. This one doesn't have that, so they could have maybe turned it down a little bit to make sure it did not overheat. But performance-wise, it's definitely not performing where I expected it to perform, at least on that benchmark. And doing things like Microsoft Word seem to work okay on here. A little sluggish to me compared to some of the other Apollo Lake devices we've looked at that are mini PCs, but it's good enough to get the job done when you're doing some work on it. So Microsoft Word and Office and Excel and all that good stuff should be just fine on here. Now, these low-end PCs are never great at gaming, but there are games you can play, like Minecraft here. I did turn the display down to 720p from its native 1080, just to be fair to some of the other mini PCs that we have looked at. And you can see we're getting frame rates here above 30 frames per second with Minecraft with the Optifine performance-enhancing plugin installed. So you can play some casual stuff on here, but higher-end stuff will not perform as well. And if you're curious how something a little more demanding might work on here, I did install Rocket League, and you can see what video settings I've got here. So 720p, everything turned way down, and we'll pop out of here and start playing. And you can sometimes get into the mid-20s for frame rate, which isn't so bad, but it will drop down considerably when you've got a lot of other things going on screen. So not the best performance here for more modern games. And of course, you can see how ugly it looks here with all those settings turned down at the lower resolution, but somewhat playable, but again, not a gaming device by any means. And on the 3D Mark Cloudgate benchmark test, we got a score of 1,329, which actually surprised me because last year we looked at the Asus E200, which was powered by an Atom Cherry Trail processor, and I expected that we would see slightly better performance than that computer, and in fact we're behind that computer on the two graphics tests here. You can see the differences there. The CPU performance on the physics test does perform better on this next generation Intel chip, but we should have seen better graphics performance. We're not seeing it out of this. Now, I did run some thermal testing on this because many computers that are fanless get slower the more they're taxed, and 3D Mark has a stress test you can run, which runs the same benchmark over and over again to see if heat has any impact on performance, and it stayed at a passing grade of 98.4%, which is a good thing. So it's not going to get any slower, but it looks like it's been dialed in at a lower rate of performance just to keep it from throttling as you tax it more. So you'll see consistent performance out of here, but it's not as fast as it could be, in my opinion. And we've got one last thing to check out here, and that is its Kodi performance. And one of the things that I've been really interested in lately, as many of you are as well, is HEVC video. And we've got this jellyfish test file that we've been running. I'll put a link to where you can find this down below. This is running at 140 megabits per second, 4K, HEVC at 10-bit. This is like the 4K Blu-ray format here, and as you can see, it is playing back just fine. I'll pull up the statistics here, and this is because these newer generation Intel chips can decode this video in hardware, and this would choke a prior generation computer, but this one with the new processor can handle it just fine. Look at it, it's running perfectly. We're not seeing any drop frames or anything else, and that surprised me because I didn't realize the Apollo Lake stuff can do this as well as it's doing it. So really good example here as to how Intel has been moving things forward on their processors as far as multimedia playback goes. It also does fine with 1080p Blu-ray MKV files too, so you can see here we're not dropping any frames on this one. So I think all of your media, no matter how low end or high end it is, will likely play back just fine on here. So not a bad multimedia experience, even though some other portions of this computer are a bit lacking. And this is another great example of a computer that has a nice price and looks really nice in its pictures and in its video, but from a hardware perspective, it looks like they took the philosophy of, well, it's good enough, let's ship it. And there are some issues with it, namely just the tolerances on the build here, especially that corner that kind of clicks every time you open it up, and the trackpad on here is just horrible. I hope I got a bad one, but even if the trackpad is working properly, it's still not tracking my finger as well as I would like, and the very limited click area here is pretty bad implementation as well. So again, a buy at your own risk kind of thing. I think at $300, this is probably too much for the issues that I'm seeing here, and that's a shame because it's got a nicely performing Apollo Lake chip, a really nice display, but they really didn't put this thing together very well, and I think that's going to diminish its usefulness over time. If you can get it for $175, maybe, but $300 is a bit too much, especially because I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of other $200 PCs that will perform as well as this one, but will offer better support as well as better build quality as well. So that'll do it for this one. This is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by my Patreon supporters, including gold level supporters Mark Bollinger and Kodi Falk. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/Patreon to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/S.